Okay, so we will be beginning now. There's still some people outside, but they can enter when they want. So we finished our last paper session, and the conference is coming to an end, but there's still the closing keynote. So today I'm very happy to have here Adrián Cuevas, who is co-founder and technical director of Nomada Studio, and he will present us about the creativity process of the smash hit video game Gris. So let's thank the speaker, please.
Well, hello. First of all, thank you to the organization to invite me. It's an honor to be here. I don't know if you all know, probably not all of you know, about Gris. Gris is a video game that we have developed here in Barcelona. Our company is called Nomada Studio. It's our first game as a company. And it's kind of a 2D platformer, like an old school Mario, but we focus more in the art, the music, the narrative of the game. So for the ones that you don't know the game, I'm going to show you first the first trailer that we did, the reveal trailer of the game. Well, obviously it's 13 December last year. The game is out, you can buy it. So you should buy it. So, well, first of all, I would like to say that probably we're going to be off track tonight with this talk. I'm pretty sure you have been hearing a lot of great presentations with numbers and data, but I'm not going to be like that. This is going to be different. I hope your mind relax and don't think about too much, just get some inspiration. We'll explain a bit the story of how we create this game, some decisions we made when we were creating the game, designing, narrative-wise, a bit of everything, and the whole process of the game. So you will know a bigger, let's say the bigger picture of how we create this game. And some of the decisions I think are quite cool, good things to know when you are creating a new game or when you are deciding how to interact with the player in some of the things. So first I will introduce myself. As Joan says, I'm Adrián Cuevas. I'm the technical director and one of the founders of Nomada Studio. But when I studied here in Barcelona. I studied my university here. My first work was actually as a biomechanical engineer. I was working in motion capture for that biomechanical analysis. And I decided that I wanted to do video games, so basically I quit and I went to England looking for a job. And my first job was in Brighton, where I was working for Buzz. A lot of people don't know, in Europe was kind of a big thing. It's an interactive TV show that you play in the PlayStation with these big red buttons and colors. And after that, I had a chance to go to Ubisoft Montreal. I worked in Far Cry 3 for more than 2 years. Then I went to Denmark, where I worked in the Hitman franchise. And finally, I came back to Barcelona. I started working in Ubisoft Barcelona again. And here I work in several games. Probably the most important one is Rainbow Six Siege. Then, briefly, I will introduce you my two partners. One is Roger Mendoza. He studied in Barcelona with me. That's where I met him. And he has worked in Ubisoft Montreal for like almost 6 years. He worked mostly in Assassin's Creed and also some white skateboarding and also Rainbow Six. And the third part of this team is Conrad Rousset. He's a renowned artist from Barcelona. Well, he's actually from Terrassa. And he has been working with big advertising companies for a while. He has done some adverts for Adidas, Nike, Disney, Coca-Cola. So a lot of things. But probably his most well-known exhibition has been this work. It's called Musas. And it has been exhibited all over the world. It has been exhibited in London, San Francisco, Los Angeles, pretty much everywhere. And the thing is that he never worked in video games, but he always had an itch for it. He liked a lot playing video games. And like most of the good adventures in life, our adventure started in a bar. That's what it happened. Basically, I had to go to Montreal again for 4 months to work in Rainbow Six, and I was doing like a farewell party. And by chance, we met with a friend that was celebrating her birthday party. And Conrad was one of the guests of the birthday party. But we didn't know him. And basically, we sit all together, and by chance, we set Roger, me, and Conrad together and start talking. And basically, Conrad told us that he always wanted to make a video game, but never did it before. So he was looking for people to help him do it. And to be completely honest with you, we were quite drunk. So I thought, this is going nowhere. I'm going to Montreal in 2 days. Let's forget about it. But I was saying yes, obviously, but yeah. Luckily for me, Roger stayed here in Barcelona and kept talking with Conrad. And 4 months after I came back, oh yeah, I forgot, by the way, this is the first draw that Conrad did of the game when we were in the bar. He drew that in a paper, and he said, I want to make a game where the colors are very important. And I want to start, yeah, you can see. Yeah. But he said, like, okay, that was everything we saw. I like, okay, it's pretty, it's just, yeah. But he wanted to start in black and white and getting colors. That's kind of the key part of the game, no? And anyway, so as I say, I left, but luckily Roger kept talking with Conrad, and when I came back, they told me, hey, we have been still talking about this, we want to make it. Are you in? And I said, well, of course. So the first thing we did, bear with me, is very rough, but it was a small prototype trying to show a bit the idea of the game we have in mind. It's just a very small part of the game that shows which type of game, because sometimes it's hard to explain which type of game you are making. You need to do, even if it's a small prototype. This one, as I say, very rough, very sketchy. It's like a 2-3 frames animation for the character, very ugly, but it shows a bit what I'm talking about. Well, as you see, it's pretty rough, but it was showing a bit the mood that we wanted to get with the game. So that was the first thing we did, and when we saw that it worked, we started working fully in a prototype. Basically, we quit our jobs and started dedicating 100% of our time on it. We hired a couple of people to help us with it. This is the studio that we were in a co-working, trying to make the game. And what we decided to do is doing like a 15 minutes prototype and bring it to Gamescom in Germany to show it to several publishers. Luckily for us, one of the publishers liked it a lot, and it was Devolver Digital. You might know Devolver Digital is one of the biggest independent publishers, independent game publishers in the world. And to be completely honest, when we showed them the game, we have no hope at all, because they are more used to do games like this, which obviously that's not Gris, or even weirder things like that. I'm not going to comment. But luckily, they like it, so we are in. We were able to start the team, create the company, Nomada Studio, and we stay working in production almost 22 months. And after the 22 months, finally, we released the game. This is basically the team that we had here in Barcelona. It's kind of a weird team for a video game company because almost 80% of the studio never worked in video games before. So that's quite weird. But at the same time, it was very refreshing. We had a lot of cool ideas. They weren't used to work like the video games work, especially the artists. We had to obviously tell them what is RAM memory and stuff like that. You know, like the resolution is not infinite, like when you do a poster. So things like that was kind of hard at the beginning, but we get along very well, and they have really good ideas, and they were thinking outside what is a common game usually, right? Anyway, so that was very good for us. And today I want to show you a bit these 5 points of the creation of Gris. First, I will start with the narrative, art, animation design, and music. Narrative, for us, was a very important thing and a really challenging one, because when you have some limitations on resources, like we did, you have to try to turn this kind of limitations in strengths. So one of the first decisions we made was not having any text, not having dialogues, not having UI. So basically trying to avoid localization, trying to avoid more work. So for us that was very important, but it was challenging as well. The good thing is that we decided to go for a game that was going to be very artistic. The music is very important, and trying to express everything with just that, gameplay, art, and music. But that means that sometimes it's really hard to express a story. So what we did, it was going for a very common story, very common feeling, that is grief. So basically, that's the basics of our story. And we went for a very metaphorical way of explaining this. That has a really good thing and a really bad thing. The good thing of going metaphorical is that people can project their own stories. So if you just hit the basics, have symbolism, trying to convey the feelings with the music and the art, they can feel that there's happening something, and you can convey a lot of feelings. And most of the people actually project their own story on this grief of feeling. Being metaphorical, this grief feeling also relies to kind of a depression, like a general depression. So pretty much everybody has passed through some rough phases in their lives. So when you are playing the game, a lot of people are thinking like, "Well, I'm feeling like what I felt when I lost my father," or things like that. We have received a lot of emails and a lot of comments. You can see it on YouTube, for example. A lot of people playing, when they finish, it's like a catharsis for them. They are like, "Fuck, this is like when I lost my father, I was stuck for a year." I received an email of someone that lost his brother a week before playing Gris, and he wasn't able to talk to anyone about it. And after playing, he sent us an email right away saying that for him it was a help to cope with this problem. So that's very, very rewarding for us. It's something that, obviously, when you do the game, you don't try to achieve that high levels, but you would like to. And for some people, it was really touchy. The problem is that at the same time, some people didn't really connect with it. Luckily for us, it was just a few. But these people, they will see just a very plain and monotonous story, because you are not telling them what's happening and what they have to feel. If you don't feel it, that's the problem. Anyway, for most of our players, it worked really well. So how we did this, first of all, we did this diagram, this kind of our own version of the hero's journey, if you know about movies. So we did this first so we can have like a map of the whole progression of the game. This is the game from start to finish and what's happening in the middle. And it helps us a lot to keep the pacing of the game. So you know at the beginning it must be a bit slower, then you go up, then you have the classical breaking point, then you have to come back. Well, it's a classical structure for movies. And then we map all these bigger events that we wanted to have, so we can also know that every 10, 15 minutes there was always something happening. So when we were doing this, we contacted with a psychologist that is also a game designer, Héctor Fuster from Barcelona, and he helped us a lot looking for the symbolism of the story, how we could spread some of the things during the game so people could understand a bit that we are talking about this process of grief. Once we have this, we start thinking about the world. So again, limited resources. We wanted to go first for an open world kind of Metroidvania that you could go wherever you go, whenever you want. But the problem is that that's a lot of work, especially when you have a world that is evolving, that is getting colors like us. You will have to do pretty much every part of the world 5 times because we have 5 evolutions. So because of this, we changed for a more linear approach. And to be honest, I think it was a really good decision because it also helped us a lot to guide the player. When we are aiming to go for people that never play video games before as well. So we try to have a really broad community of players. Because we thought that with the art that we have, with the music that we have, a lot of people that never play video games, they will see the trailer and they will say, wow, that's beautiful, I would like to try it. And if it's something really hardcore, they will say, wow, that's too tough, I'm not going to do that, it's really, really challenging. I will look the video or YouTube or whatever, and that's it. But then when you have a linear experience, you can tell them exactly what they have to do, they don't get lost. It's much easier to control what the player is going to experience. In any case, we try to go for a kind of this linear open world, which doesn't make any sense, but it's how we call it, linear open world. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to tell you, or that you feel, that the whole world is changing, even that you are not seeing everything again. So what we did is creating this hub. This is like the center of the world. So the player passes through this place like 4 or 5 times. So he will see how it changed the colors, how it changed this part. So he can have the idea that the whole world is changing because you are seeing this many times and it's changing. And also, when you are playing on a level and you unlock a color, you will still play a little bit more of that level coming back, and you will see how that world has changed. So you see that world changing, the main hub changing, and more or less your mind thinks like, okay, so the whole world is changing. It's not just that part. Also, another of the things that we did for Gris that is not very common in a lot of video games is doing a storyboard. For us, the color progression of the game was really important. So we had this pretty much the first month of production. Here we could also see all the key important moments of the game. And also you see how it progresses, how it starts in this black and white, it's getting colored, and it ends up with basically full of color. Okay, art, as you can imagine, is one of our most important tools in the game. It's one of the biggest selling points. We decided to go for like a handcrafted, very warm, very common art, but it's not common in video games, but it's much more common like in a museum or an exhibition. So first of all, we started to create a lot of concepts. We had like hundreds of notebooks with concepts, especially from Conrad. He did a lot of these ideas. Obviously, not all of them end up in the game, but most of them did, actually. And creating the character was very challenging, but it's very, very important because, you know, it's the thing that you're going to see the most. And we had a lot of inspiration in fashion design. Back on those days, Conrad was checking a lot of magazines and web pages of fashion. And then we created our first character. That was our first idea. We liked it a lot, but there was a lot of issues with this idea. And this is one of the important things we learned during the process. We wanted to express a bit of the evolution of the story of the game with the dress of the girl, so having colors that were getting unlocked as well in the dress. But when we were doing this, we tried a few things, and we realized that having that much information in the dress was, first of all, really hard for animating. We are animating frame-by-frame animation. So that will mean that you have to animate the eye, the lines, the curves, the spots, every time you do another animation. You have to do every frame for that. That's a lot of work. And on top of that, we use the cameras a lot to guide the player. And we also do a lot of big zoom outs so you can see beautiful concepts. And when you do a zoom out of a character with that much information in the dress, it becomes blurry and noisy, and it doesn't look good. It looks pretty bad. So we decided to try to look for something much more elegant and minimal. So this is the process that we went through, trying to get a character with a bit more simple. And this is the final design of our character. This is Gris. Finally, when we have this, we start working on the scene, on the environment, and the maps. For us, one of the main references are Disney movies, Ghibli movies, but also Moebius is one of the biggest references we have. And to be honest, one of the references that pretty much no one realized, and it's normal that you don't realize, is aquascaping. It's quite weird, but back in those days, Conrad was going through a very dark phase. He was creating his own aquarium, and he spent a lot of time and money making his aquarium. That probably now, I don't know where it is, but probably nowhere. And as you can see, we use a lot of this as reference. There is a kind of a branch of aquascaping that is called Iwagumi. It's a Japanese culture of aquascaping. And they pay a lot of attention to elements to create a composition. So this is basically how they do it. With a few elements, they create a beautiful composition. And we use the same thing. That was the same idea for us when creating the levels. Well, once we have all this, we start creating concepts, a lot of concepts. We were doing like maybe 5 concepts, 2, 3, 5 concepts every day. We end up with more than 1,000 concepts of the game. Obviously, some of the concepts make it to the game, but some others didn't. This one, for example, is from another part of the story that we had, but it never made it to the game. But others were they are exactly like that in the game right now. Once we had this concept, the story was clear. Us, the programmers and the more technical guys, we did everything we could so the game would look exactly like the concept art. So these are a couple of examples that right now it looks very similar in the game. Okay, another of the more important things for us was animation. Animation, it was, as I said, hand by frame by frame, and it was doing by hand, obviously digital. At the beginning, Conrad had the idea of doing everything on paper, scan it, and paint it. Obviously, that was madness, and we convinced him that it was madness. There's a few teams that have tried, even one in Spain, but it's a lot of work. It's not worth it. You can do effects, you can put some paper effects, play with scan some watercolors, that's what we did, and it will look something like it was done in paper. It's not exactly the same, but it's very, very similar, and it's much more convenient. Anyway, this is the first animation we did for the running cycle. In a 2D platformer, this is the most important animation of the whole game, because you're going to see that for 3 hours. Basically, you're going to be running all the time, a few jumps, but that's the thing you're going to have to see the most of the time. So it's very important you get this right. That was the first animation we did to get the feeling of the rest of the animations. So that has to be perfect. We iterate a lot over this. This is the first iteration we did of the running. We thought it was a bit too crazy, so we told the animator to go for a slightly more real. He went for something like this. Then, well, as I say, we iterate a lot. One of the times we told him, okay, go crazy with it. And he created basically a flag. But, you have to try to explore as much as you can. And we finally came up with this animation. This is the running cycle we have right now. There's still a few changes. Again, the sleeve, we remove it for the same purpose. It wasn't really adding anything, and it's more work for animation. And it was also noise in the dress. So we remove it. And this is actually the cleanup phase of the animation. So it's much more clear, it goes straight to the point, that is still elegant, it's still practical as well, so that was the best. Then we decided to express all the abilities of the character with the dress, and so we could go a bit crazy with it. This is the animation of the heavy ability, so basically the dress becomes this heavy cube, and if you want to see it in the game, this is how it looks. Oops. So again, we work a lot on those animations. This is another example. This is more like a scripted scene. So it has a bit of this Disney vibe. This is how it looks in the game. Well, once we have the main character, we start thinking about the antagonist. The antagonist of Gris is this black bird. We thought that having a game that the idea was being full of colors, the antagonist would be nice if it was black ink. So that's basically this black Chinese ink. But to be honest, we weren't sure how to animate it. And we were very lucky that our animator found this animation on internet. When we saw this, we like it a lot. We like this fluidity, this kind of physical fluids and liquids. So we went for this kind of movement for the ink, for the antagonist of the game. When we were creating the biggest sequences for this antagonist, first we had to do this kind of storyboard. With the storyboard, the technical and the animators and the artists decided which parts were going to be with animation, which parts should be with particles or with programming. We had to decide that. Once we have that, they do the first pass of the animation. For the first pass of the animation, you try to skip frames. You just create the key frames and in a rough line. With this, you can bring it right away to the engine and try it. So you can place everything and see if everything makes sense, if the camera is nice, and if the character and the bird fits all together. Once you have that, you create the in-between frames, you clean the lines, and then you just start doing the coloring, and finally, you put it in the game. So this is just the coloring, and now it's with the textures. And this is how it looks in the game. Another of the characters we have is this eel. This is another part of the antagonist. And that was especially challenging because the eel, we wanted to make it go pretty much whenever we wanted. And it has kind of this long body. So doing everything with 2D will be a lot of work. So what we did is doing like a mix. We did the head of the eel is traditional, frame by frame animation. And we attach it to a 3D body with the skeletons. Let me see, sorry. What? Doesn't play? It doesn't play, I think. Sorry for that. No? Okay. Well, I'm sorry. But anyway. So yeah, basically we attach it to a 3D body that is with bones. So you can animate the bones and the bones react. They can twist. They can go wherever you go. And the head is synchronized with the body, so it doesn't look like two different parts. Let me see. At least I can show you how it looks. Obviously, we wanted to do all this with animation. It would be way too much. But it worked perfectly for us. OK, then we'll talk a bit about design. Obviously, for us, it's very important, this part, because it's a video game. But especially the challenges we had is that we wanted to go for a broad audience. And trying to appeal to a lot of people and still not being boring is really hard. So what we did, first of all, is getting some references. Obviously, one of our biggest references is Journey. But then we have others like Limbo or Ori. We always define, when we were looking for a publisher, we would define Gris as a mix between Ori, like Journey, and Ori and the Blind Forest. That's exactly the thing we wanted to go for. And when we started deciding the abilities of the game, this is the main mechanics we have. We wanted to try to express also the evolution of the game with the abilities, and also link the abilities to the phases of the game. For example, when you get the heavy ability, the girl is able to break stuff and it's heavy, and it can break floors and jars. So that's when it's linked to the more anger phase of the girl. Or if you go to the dive ability, that dive ability is when it's in the lowest point, when it goes to the depression. So you go into a cave, it goes to deep in the world. So that was our way to showing this. But then we have our biggest challenge of all, which is not having death in the game. When you have these beautiful concept arts, and you have jumping on the rocks, blah, 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 but then what happens if you fail? And you cannot die. So that was a really big challenge for us when we were designing levels. We have to make a game that the failure was not dying, you don't have points, you don't have time, basically you have to, and you still have to do these beautiful things. So what we end up doing is doing a lot of contraptions and trying to design the levels properly, so if you fail, you can always come back. This is, for example, one of the ideas that we have for this area. If you fail, there is a floor there, and there is a contraption that brings you back, and as soon as you are up, it gets out. So at least you still see the clear and clean concept art. This is, again, another example. We are in the sky. It's all beautiful, stars, but if you fail, there is a floor there that appears with the lights. This is a main mechanic in the game in that level. There is architecture that appears just with light. So we do all these things. But it's very challenging when you design a game with no death. Really, really challenging. Then creating the puzzles, that's very important. We were creating a lot of puzzles with the mechanics, and then deciding, trying each puzzle separately first, and then trying to do a combination of all of them, and quickly prototype them. Even if it's a really ugly prototype like this. Oops. But it's really important that you try the game as much as possible, because for us, we wanted a lot of people that never play video games to try these prototypes and told us if it was too hard. But also people that play video games and told us if it was too boring. So basically what we did is, if we found some of the puzzles really hard, but still we like them a lot, what we did is creating these optional challenges. So when you are playing the game, there is what we call a collectible, and if you won, if you feel that you can do it, you can do all these harder puzzles, and you will achieve a collectible. And when you get all the collectibles at the end of the game, this is a special reward for these people. Anyway, so when we tried with everybody and everybody was happy, we created the level. As I said, a lot of people in our studio never work in video games, and our level designer never did. So he's an architect, so he did all the levels in AutoCAD, basically. We have the whole wall in AutoCAD. So that's how we created the levels. Then when we have that, we send it to the artists, and they create the same version but making it a bit more beautiful. Then we decided which assets we need to create the wall. We did a lot of variation of the assets, so you don't see a lot of repetition, because it's a key thing for us that you see like the whole wall is unique. And then we assemble everything, and with the effects and the shades and everything, it looks like that. Finally, I would like to talk a bit about the music. The music sometimes is one of those forgotten parts of a game or a movie. And honestly, when you see a game or a movie without the proper music, it's awful. And when you add a great musician to the team, it brings your game to another level. It's like changing from second division to first division. It's really, really impressive. And we were very lucky because we met Berlinist. Berlinist is a band from Barcelona, and they never work in video games again. But luckily for us, the main composer is a geek of video games. He loves video games more than anyone in our team. He plays a lot, every day for hours and hours. So when we told him about making a video game, he was completely on board with it. The main reference they have, there were these three basically, Ico, Shadow of Colossus, and Another World. I don't know if you have played the games, but they have really epic soundtracks. But some of the other reference they have, and as a lot of people wouldn't realize, is this idea of synesthesia. I don't know if you know what is synesthesia, but basically it's this relation between two senses that shouldn't be connected. And like, for example, it could be a taste, could be connected with a color. And there's a lot of studies and research that have been done between connection between colors and sounds. So they look into past studies, like you can see here, and try to compose the music for the different levels based on the color that represents the level. You see, for example, there's some notes that are more used when it's red, some where it's more with green. So they use this with composing the music. And as I was saying, the music is really, really important. I'm going to show you one of the examples we did in the prototype. When we were creating this part, this is a key part of the game, is unlocking a color. And we had to have that in the prototype to show the people what is the game about, because it's a very important scene. And I was working in this, basically in the graphic part, and I didn't like it at all. I was like, this is impossible. It's going to be ugly as hell. But luckily for me, we tried with the music. I showed it to the musicians. They told me a few things, and he said, okay, try with this music. And this is how it looked, and it blew my mind. So as you can see, it's very, very, very nice. The music, it adds a lot to this part. And we were very lucky that Berlinist was with us from the very first day. They were working with us even in the prototype. And that make us change some of the design sometimes. For example, there's another scene here that we were working, is where the girl is fighting against some wind. And we were going to just have some music on the background, but when the guys sent us the music, we liked it so much that we changed a bit the scene. We made the music a key part of the moment, and also we add some of the symbolism that we wanted to put in the game in this moment. At the beginning, this scene ended up basically getting into a cave, and that's pretty much it. But now it's much more epic, and we show a bit of the symbolism that we wanted to show. Well, and as I was saying, we don't have dialogues, we don't have text, so we try to use everything we had to show this evolution of the game and trying to explain how the progress of the girl through this process. And one of them was also with the music. For us, as I said, one of the most important parts is the unlocking the color. So we end up coming with this idea of, as well as we are unlocking colors, we will be unlocking music as well. So during that scene, that the music of that scene is the same as the intro of the game, and we use that theme, is the main theme of the game, for that scene, and it will be evolving with the new colors. So the first time you hear this music, well, the second time that you hear the music, it will be just with the most minimal version of it, is when you are unlocking your first color. Is this one? You're gonna hear it, there's no video, so you can just focus on the music. You hear it's just a basic melody, couple of instruments, just very, very, very minimal. Then when you go for the second color, you add a couple of instruments and make it a bit longer. Oops, didn't sound, sorry. Again, you now see the string instruments. You have seen already the blue sequence, so I will go straight away to the last one. In the last one, you will hear pretty much everything. We go full on. There's chorus, percussion, strings, every instrument we can find in the libraries. Well, and finally, I would like to show you another of the trailers we have, so you can see some of the things that I have explained today. Well, that's pretty much all for me. You have any questions, I will be more than happy to answer. If you want to write an email or if you want to collaborate, I know you do a lot of things with video games, like play tasting or whatever. Always, if you want, drop me an email and we can always talk about it. Thank you. So, any question?
Hi, I'm Pejman from Ontario Tech University in Canada. Awesome presentation.
Thank you.
Update. You basically summarized the whole game development in less than 1 hour, which was amazing.
40 minutes, yeah.
What I wanted to ask you, you referred to iteration a lot during your presentation. I just wanted to understand how, as a design team, as a development team, how did you make that final decision on what makes it to the game and what won't make it to the game?
That's actually one of the most challenging tasks. I can tell you a bit about my story in Montreal. When I was working in Ubisoft Montreal, I learned a role that I didn't know it existed, that in Ubisoft is called the closer. The closer is a guy that comes to your project and everybody hates, because you have been working 5 years in Far Cry, for example, and the last 3 months, this guy appears and starts cutting things. It's like, okay, you have been working a year in that feature, it's not quality enough, it doesn't adapt enough to the game, and it cuts everything. So obviously you hate him, but it's needed. It's a really, really crucial part of the development. You have to know when to stop. It will never be perfect. Your game will never be perfect. So there has to be someone with that role. In our case, basically Roger and I were the two guys with more experience in the industry, and we wanted to create a game that was very artistic and very fresh. So what we did is the first year and a half, we basically didn't complain about anything, well, unless it was crazy, but most of the stuff we didn't complain about anything. We let the artists to do whatever they want, the designer, so we tried to give them everything. But when it was, I would say 6 months before release or 8 months before release, we start deciding what goes in and what doesn't, and telling them, okay, you cannot iterate over this more, this is good enough. If it's too bad and we don't have time to iterate, we cut it. But that's a really, really important part of the iteration, knowing when to stop. Obviously, especially the artists, and they never made video games, they're always thinking that it could look a bit better, that it could maybe be, I don't know, nicer, and it's like, okay, that's it. It looks good. You have been seeing this for a year, so you are mad with it, but this is really good, so you need to tell them when to stop, yeah.
Hey, Elena Naka, University of Waterloo. I was just wondering about the music that you showed, the progression of the different bits of music. For the decision on like what's the best, you said you iterated a lot, but again, I'm assuming this wasn't done in playtesting sessions, player-focused design, because you said at some point your design team just made that decision. But again, based on what is that decision made, and have you, just like you explored these different things for the colors, have you explored similar research on music and what provides the most impact in terms of game music, emotionally?
Yeah, well, that's something that the main composer of Berlinist did. He did all this research. I cannot tell you exactly what he did, but I know he did, because I remember that he told us, for example, for the last scene of the game, I don't know if you have played, but the last cinematic of the game, we told him, okay, we want something that is very, how can you say, like something that will make you change the way of your feeling at that moment. You have to be depressed, and it's a moment of realization. It's a moment that you have to say like, fuck it, I can still be good. I will survive this pain. No, that's what we said as designers. And he's the one saying, I know what I have to do. And he come with us, he come with our music, and he say, this music is going to make cry 90% of the people. And to be honest, I don't know how he makes it, because I don't know. But every time I see that sequence, I cry. I do it a lot, because I like a lot watching people playing that part of the game, because it's for me the most important part. And I know it sounds like probably a sociopath, but I love to see people crying in that part of the game. I love it. You have to YouTube it. It's amazing. End of Gris, and I don't know, I love it. Because they cry of happiness. It's a depression, but they cry of happiness, of knowing how to overcome that. And I don't know exactly how he made it, but he knew. When I told him what he had to do, he knew exactly what to do. Obviously, he has experience. He has been working as a musician for years. He had a few albums with Berlinist. And I know they did some research as well with movies and games, like the games I show. So I don't know exactly how he made it, but I know he did. And talking about the playtest, well, the first thing that it helped us a lot is having this broad team, because we wanted to have a game that could play pretty much everyone. So a lot of people there never play video games, literally never. So they were the first ones that we wanted to try the puzzles. Obviously, after probably a few months that they have been trying, they are not good enough for testing anymore, because now they have played big games. So what we were doing is bringing it to friends, bringing it to people around us. And the last year, pretty much, we have an external team as well, helping us in Poland with the testing. And basically, they test the game, but the first 1 week, 2 weeks, they give you just the impression as a playtest. They don't actually test functionality. They just give you the things that they feel, where they found it hard. So that was another way of having a bit of knowledge about the puzzles. But obviously, we don't have enough resources to be like for 3 months or for a month focusing on the playtest and iterate enough. But I think it was more or less enough with what we had.
Hi. Hi, I'm Carlos from the University of York and Goldsmiths, University of London. This talk was very inspiring. Thank you so much. But actually, I would like to ask a bit more about the technical side of it.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I assume like you are a very technical person, right? So, well, did you write the game in your own tools? Did you use any commercial tools? And what were the challenges that you faced from a technical perspective?
Well, first of all, we use Unity as the engine. And in general, I will always recommend to use an engine unless you have a really good reason not to make it. Because, you know, Unity and Unreal, they let you customize quite a lot. So you can do a lot of tools and work with it pretty well. And in our case, we went with Unity because we know it better, especially Roger and me, that we are both the only programmers that were in the team. And we thought also it was better for a 2D game compared with Unreal. But basically, what we did is trying to customize it as much as possible. We end up having the artists using Unity as well. And that's obviously kind of a challenge. So what we did is creating a lot of tools in Unity so they were more comfortable. And especially because, to be honest, they could mess up the scenes. So we did a lot of tools to check in that everything was correct. Like, for example, when you work with a 2D game, it doesn't matter the depth position anymore. You have to take in account the sorting draw, you know, like you're drawing with a sorting layer or whatever. So we had a lot of tools just to tell us if two things were in the same sorting layer in the same place, things like that. Or so you could see how everything was spread, or if something was too far, or if something was invisible. Well, we have a lot of tools just to check that everything was correct. And also we have a lot of tools to import from Photoshop to Unity. That was also another key part, because they used to work in Photoshop. So these tools were very, very important to iterate. Every time they have to change something, you can just drag a file to our exporter, it will re-export everything, get it in Unity, and it was in place, no problem. So that was very important. And from the technical point of view, the first few months, Roger and I, we work a lot in the shaders to make it look like if it was a real picture. So we work a lot with the watercolor shaders, with the paper shaders that we have. But basically, that was the first few months. So once we had that idea clear, after that, basically, we told the artists what we could do and what we couldn't, and they pretty much get it quite quickly, and that's pretty much unless you have something more important that you want to know, I know, animation, sound, but the rest, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Hello, Cristina Silla from the University of Minho. I found it absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Regarding the tools, can you tell us which tool did you use for animation? Yeah,
well, for this project, we used mostly Photoshop right away.
Okay.
Yeah, we did pretty much everything with Photoshop. But then, in Unity, we didn't use Mechanim that much. Is the animation engine they have. We use it, but basically all the transitions we code it ourselves, because for a 2D game animation, it's not that important, the Mechanim, because it will help you with transitions, it will help you with blending, but that's for bones. So if you're doing a frame-by-frame animation, you don't need to blend between positions. But you need to control a lot where to transition, from which frame to which frame. That's very important. So that's why we recode everything. But for the tools, we basically use Photoshops and scripts that we created.
Okay, and how long did it took to develop the game?
So if you don't count the first year was basically making the prototype, which we also used to define the game and to create some of the tools. But probably from that year, like 4 or 5 months was looking for a publisher, checking the contract, signing the deal. And after that, when we start production, it was 22 months from January 2017, 17, to pretty much, it was November of 2019. So pretty much 22 months of the full development, plus this year of pre-production and paperwork.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Somewhere there.
Hello, Penny Switzer from the Australian National University. Thank you for your presentation and congratulations on a beautiful game. You mentioned that most of your team were not previously game developers. I was just wondering, where did they come from? How did you find them? And did it result in a more diverse team?
Well, definitely. I mean, it was extremely diverse. As you can see, most of the people were artists that came from just advertising or maybe animation shows or whatever, or just a lot of freshmen, like from the university, the fresh graduates. And I think it was more or less easy for us, especially looking for artists, because we had Conrad, and a lot of people in Barcelona knew Conrad. So as soon as you say, okay, do you want to work with Conrad Rousset? You have a lot of people that want to work literally for free. So we pay them all, don't worry. Even to the interns we pay. But it's true, there were a lot of people that they didn't care if they weren't getting money at all, especially artists. And then, luckily for us and luckily for the rest of Spain, in Spain there wasn't many projects like this. So it was really special to tell someone, do you want to work in this kind of game? Because basically, Barcelona is growing a lot and it's getting much better, especially now. But most of the games are mobile games or, like King, Social Point, etc. But having a 2D platformer, very artistic with this music, is really hard to find. So for us, if you find people that were looking for that, it was much easier. They were looking for even moving from, we had a girl coming from Granada that came here. So the level designer, the architect came from Salamanca. And they were all willing just to move here. We didn't pay much because we didn't have that money, but it was enough, and they decided to go for it. So more or less it's good when you have a different project. There.
Thank you. So, Jan Forlang, Aalto University. Usually when people look at an artwork, you usually have like the emotional challenge. You have to deal with the emotions presented in the art. In a video game, then you also have the functional challenge of people having, how did you find that these two aspects kind of interact?
You mean like the functionality and the design and the art?
How a gameplay challenge, for example, if that hindered or if that enhanced the emotions that people were supposed to feel?
Well, especially for our game, it's very important. We were trying to avoid frustration. That was the most important thing that we were trying to avoid. And why? Because we wanted people that never play video games to play this game. So it's really, really easy to have them frustrated because just a simple jump, they might not make it. So we try to have this really smooth curve of difficulty, and that was one of the most important things, trying to make the game more or less easy at the beginning, trying to explain the basic mechanics of an adventure game, of a 2D platformer. So the first 5 minutes of the game is like a tutorial for noobs, basically. So they learn that, this is how this kind of game works. And we use also these 5 minutes to tell a bit the structure of how the whole world is going to work. In a very, very short level, we explain that you are going to be navigating through a world, that you will come back to places, and then you will be unlocking things in a very simple way. So we work a lot on that. And that's the thing. I mean, when you are trying to make a video game for everybody, there's emotions that you cannot control that the player is going to experience. But for example, you can control some things like the type of puzzles. If you create a puzzle that is more of walking around and investigating, it's probably more, chill, it's relaxed. You don't get frustrated that much unless you get lost. If you get lost, then this frustration is like where I am. But you can control, for example, that we did that in the 5th level. We control that the people think they're getting lost, but they are not. Because we are blocking their way. They don't know it, but we are blocking the way. They cannot come back. And it's like, where I am. And then you suddenly are where you should be. But we wanted that. So we play a bit with that idea of controlling what the player can make, so we can make them feel lost or chill or anxious. For example, another scene, there's the eel. The eel is pursuing you, and we want you to have the feeling that, wow, this eel is going to eat me, but you cannot fail. But it looks like you can, because if you don't do it, and in a way, there's more or less a penalty if you don't do it right, but it's like a trophy. So if you do it wrong, you won't get a trophy, but that's pretty much it. But we want this tension of, I'm going to die, but you cannot die. So we have to fight with this kind of design, challenging, at the same time trying to not to frustrate people. I don't know if this answers your question, but...
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry. It's fine. So, Daniel Johnson, Queensland University of Technology. I have one really selfish question and one you probably won't answer. The selfish question, like a lot of people, I'm about to be on a very long flight, and given I'm prepared to cry in front of people on that flight, would you recommend the PC version or the Switch version?
Okay. Okay, I have to say, I like a lot the screen on the Switch. The colors, it looks amazing. Really, it looks much better than most of the screens that everybody has in their own house. So on that regard, Switch is perfect. But it is true that performance on the Switch is not amazing. And our game is all stream. There's no loading times. It's all in one chunk. And doing that in a console like Switch, it has been a really big challenge. But I think it worked more or less okay. You won't pretty much notice it. But obviously, if you have a big screen with a lot of resolution and a sound system, then I would say play it at home. But if you are playing at home in a console or in a small TV, probably you can play it in Switch. It looks really good on Switch, so it's up to you. And don't be shy. Cry on the plane. That's fine.
I'll send you some pictures. The second question that I'm not sure you'll be able to answer, but is, can you talk at all about what you're working on now?
No. No, we are creating a new prototype now, and we will be showing to publishers soon, but we haven't announced anything yet. What I can say, obviously, is the art, the story, and in general, the music is going to be very important, and we will go for something kind of similar, but in a different way of Gris.
Thanks so much for the story. It's amazing.
Thank you. That's it.
Hi, so...
Yeah, it works.
Hi, so Triskel D. Haven from University of York. So I've done some work on accessibility, and your game is very beautiful, but it seems to focus on beauty in the visual and auditory sense. Did your game think of people with players with disabilities as far as players who are blind and players who cannot hear while you were developing your game?
Yeah, that's something that we talk, but to be honest, when you are in a small team, it's a fair project, you cannot do everything as you would like to, especially because something that we talked was about the colorblind people. That's something that we have talked about, and actually our level designer is colorblind. And he had played the game with no problem, so that's kind of our test on colorblind. That guy, that he designed the level, so usually. But anyway, we didn't have time and we didn't have the resources to do this, because sometimes when you do that, you have to iterate more on the levels and on the design, because basically there's another input on the feedback. And that's something that we would like to do more in our next games. We would like to take more of this in account. Obviously, when you go for bigger disabilities, it's much harder. If you go for someone that is, I don't know, completely deaf or blind, that's much harder. Eventually, I would like to do something, even if it's small games, for this, because I think it's nice, and I think it's also a very creative process when you focus on this. For example, I remember being in Ubisoft, we were doing prototypes sometimes, like just for fun, and there was this sound designer that was creating a game that it was just with sound. So basically, well, there was something on the screen, but it was pointless. It was basically, you have to play just with the sound. I think that's a very interesting idea. That's something he brought with new ideas for a game. So I think it's something that people should explore a bit more. But as I say, for small teams, it's really hard to... Basically, when you do your first game, you want everybody to play. And that's pretty much it. You don't have much time to do it.
Okay, so let's close the speech, and let's thank Adrian again. The magnificent